Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're executing a merciless materials science audit of the secret space program. We're going to look closely at a massive collection of engineering documents, patents, and technical dossiers that claim human history and aerospace technology have been completely hidden behind a veil of secrecy. So grab your notebooks, because we're looking strictly at the physics and the corporate blueprints to understand exactly how the ultimate flying machines evolved.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source material hits us right out of the gate with this quote. The deepest, most terrifying secret is that the government is not hiding aliens from us. They are hiding the fact that they stole the aliens' blueprints and spent 80 years building a multi-trillion-dollar counterfeit armada. So, the core argument we're analyzing today isn't about extraterrestrial magic from distant galaxies. It's about a sprawling, heavily funded, completely terrestrial engineering effort. We're tracking a multi-trillion-dollar counterfeit armada built right here on Earth by human defense contractors, dealing with real-world physics, real materials, and, as we'll see, real fatal engineering problems.
Section 1. Forging the Flux Liner, the 1980s ARV. Before the sleek, solid-state craft that dominate modern reports, there was a heavy, brute force prototype built in the 1980s, known as the Alien Reproduction Vehicle, or the ARV. According to leaked schematics, the floor of this flux liner was basically a massive wheel of copper plates separated by huge blocks of a very specific material, barium titanate. To generate a mass-canceling torsion field, which is essentially what creates the anti-gravity effect, the ship's nuclear power source had to pulse millions of volts of direct current right into the floor. Barium titanate was the ultimate electrical sponge. It's a heavy, lab-grown ceramic capable of holding back lightning and absorbing terrifying amounts of electrical pressure. And this brilliantly illustrates that these technologies aren't just myths. They're grounded in undeniable corporate history. Check this out. U.S. Patent 2420864 for a barium titanate dielectric was granted on May 20th, 1947. That is literally just months before the modern UFO era kicked off. This exact chemical recipe is what allowed human engineers to build the massive high-voltage capacitors required to form the anti-gravity floor of that early ARV fleet. All right, moving to Section 2, the Fatal Engineering Flaw, the Curie Point. So the military had their massive flying machine, and they had the ceramic sponge to hold the electricity. But there was a massive vulnerability hidden inside these glowing, superheated ceramic engine blocks. It all comes down to a fundamental rule of solid-state physics called the Curie Point. Heat is the ultimate enemy of the anti-gravity drive. The Curie Point is the exact mathematical temperature at which a magic rock essentially stops being magic. The rigid molecular structure of the crystal literally panics and scrambles under intense heat. Cross that line, and it instantly loses its ability to hold a charge or physically vibrate. It becomes just a dead piece of hot pottery. So, the crucial point is this specific number, 120 degrees Celsius. That is the remarkably low thermal ceiling for barium titanate. To put that into perspective, that is barely hotter than a fresh cup of coffee. This incredibly low ceiling created an absolute operational nightmare for the pilots. Imagine flying a 30-ton ship that relies on this technology. You're pumping millions of volts through the floor, which naturally generates massive internal friction and, frankly, apocalyptic heat. If you push the throttle too hard, or if the liquid cooling pumps fail for literally just a few seconds, the barium titanate floor hits 120 degrees Celsius, the crystal instantly loses its dielectric charge, the localized gravity field collapses in a microsecond, and the ship drops out of the sky like a stone. It was a terrifying combat hazard. Which brings us to Section 3, the Arconic Upgrade, PZT. The military quickly realized they couldn't build a reliable nuclear-powered breakaway fleet if the engine melted at such a low temperature. They needed a synthetic crystal that was vastly tougher to survive a hypersonic war zone. This timeline shows exactly how they solved it. After securing barium titanate in 1947, the material science continued to evolve rapidly. By 1955, the Secretary of the Army directly patented U.S. Patent 2708244A. This was a new, highly complex synthetic ceramic called lead zirconate titanate, or PZT. This discovery is what allowed the transition from those clunky 1980s ARV prototypes right into the massive, high-performance TR-3B stealth fleet of the 1990s. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the result of that patent was a staggering leap in thermal armor, 400 degrees Celsius. By switching to PZT, the engineers pushed the Curie Point dramatically higher, allowing the craft to survive the extreme thermal abuse of a hypersonic war zone. Let's just compare these two materials side by side to really get a sense of it. Barium titanate, as we saw, was incredibly prone to thermal collapse mid-flight due to its 120-degree limit. PZT completely changes the game. Not only does it have that 400-degree Curie point, meaning it can take vastly more thermal abuse, but it also has a much higher piezoelectric coefficient. Basically, this means when you hit it with high voltage, it vibrates much more violently, generating exponentially more gravity warp for the exact same amount of electricity. This single material upgrade is what allowed the TR-3B fleet to fly faster, hotter, and harder without the gravity well collapsing. Section 4. The Dark Biological Reality.
But, engineering triumphs in the black budget almost always come with a hidden, terrible cost. PZT doesn't just exist in nature, it has to be synthesized. Take a look at its chemical composition. It is a staggering 60% lead by weight. To manufacture these massive engine blocks, contractors had to bake this compound in industrial kilns at over 1200 degrees Celsius. And at that extreme heat, the lead oxide doesn't just sit there. It becomes a highly volatile neurotoxic gas. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the horrifying reality it reveals for the human beings who actually built these things. The source text argue that the blue-collar engineers and factory workers at classified facilities, places like Norton Air Force Base and Plant 42, who cast, machined, and inevitably inhaled the dust of these massive PZT blocks, were subjected to severe, lethal, heavy metal lead poisoning. The system basically treated the neurological damage of its workforce as acceptable, disposable casualties, all just to push the physical limits of electrogravitic flight. So we'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. If the source material is right, the machines flying in our skies aren't alien miracles. They are human-engineered, deeply toxic industrial weapons. It really forces us to ask, are the true victims of the UFO cover-up the very human workers who were poisoned in the dark to build them? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you, and I'll see you on the next explainer.